gospel reading today comes from the Gospel of Luke, chapter 12, verses 29 through 34. Chapter 12 of Luke is a really great chapter. So I want to encourage you, just go home and read it. I'm going to read a little bit to you. Don't be afraid, not all of it, just a little bit. But you should go home and read it. The whole chapter 12. The whole chapter is dedicated to admonitions, warnings and admonitions. It's Luke's. There's just Jesus is just sort of laying it out in chapter 12. It's really good. You should read it. But here's verses 29 through 34. Well, let me set it up for you. One of the things that happens in chapter 12 is that Jesus, he's talking to his disciples. He's gathered his disciples, but almost always in chapter 12, there's a bigger audience present, right? So he's got the 12 disciples. He's talking to them, but he's doing it in front of
an audience,
a big crowd. So what does that tell us? It tells us if we get to, the circle is broadened. Like it's not just the 12, but that we all get invited to this knowledge, and we all. It's not invited to the knowledge alone. There's some challenges in it. So we're all challenged by it. So he's talking to his disciples, but he's talking to a bigger group too. So there's really two intended audiences here. And so he says, and do not keep striving for what you are to eat and what you are to drink, and do not keep worrying. For it is the nations of the world that strive after all these things, and God knows that you need them. Instead, strive for God's kingdom, and these things will be given to you as well. Do not be afraid, little flock, for it is God's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. Sell your possessions and give alms. Make purses for yourselves that do not wear out, an unfailing treasure in heaven, where no thief comes near and no moth destroys. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. Amen. May the hearing of these words add insight and blessing to your lives. Well, I want you to remember this, first of all, because there's a lot of conversation going on in our world today around what Jesus really thinks about money. There's a lot of conversation that's been happening. If you're paying attention in the news and in social media and stuff, I hear it all the time. Maybe I hear it more because people like to talk to me about these things. But I recently heard a conversation where somebody who had more money, and there's nothing wrong with having money, but they were feeling defensive about it, and they said, Jesus doesn't have a problem with rich people. Jesus never says anything about money being, Jesus never says that we should, give our money away. And so I just want Jesus really does. I'll read it again.
Don't do that for money.
It's true. And this is something we have to wrestle with. So, we can laugh, but it's true. We have to wrestle with it. Sell your possessions, right, and give alms. That's tithe. Give everything away. Give alms to the poor. Alms. Yeah. And that's hard to hear, isn't it? Mm-hmm. Especially in a world where we do spend a lot of time. I don't know if you're like me, it's hard not to worry about. It's just hard. It's hard not to worry about how we're going to pay bills, how we're going to get groceries, how are we going to retire, how are we going to live in the future? Oh my gosh, who's going to take care of me if I'm, if I don't have any? It's hard not to think about these things and to be concerned. And everybody I know who is my age and in my city have the same worries. I don't want to point fingers or ask questions. There are a lot of people who we get worried about it. It's hard not to, right?
Right.
And yet, here's this, and not only is it hard not to worry about it, it's a challenge when your faith is saying, and this text says it so clearly, don't worry. Gosh, Jesus says that a lot. If you Google how many times does Jesus talk about money in the Bible, you will be amazed.
You'll be shocked.
Shocked. It's a lot.
Everything.
Number one topic. But the other second number one topic, the second topic right after money is fear. Do not be afraid. How many times does Jesus say that? Not just Jesus, but it's throughout our Old Testament as well. Do not be afraid. Do not be afraid. And it's so hard. It's so hard. Don't worry about where your food is going to come from. Don't worry about where you're going to live. Don't worry about these things. Don't worry about it, is what it says, what Jesus says. And not only don't worry, but sell all your possessions. Give alms. Make a little purse. That's a great image. He says, make a little purse for yourself. Make a purse for yourself. Put everything that you need can go into that purse. That's how he sends the disciples out too, right? He says to them, go out. Go out, carry nothing but a small purse or bag, and go out and go to people's homes and share with them this love, this amazing news. Go out into the world and trust that you will be taken care of. Your needs will be provided for. And if somebody doesn't offer you food, you just wipe the dust off your feet and move on. Just move on. Hey, that's what Jesus says. Is everybody still in?
Yeah, story.
Still ready to be Christian? That's what Jesus says. Man. Now we have to say, is that what he really means? Is there any way out of this? Because I don't like it. I've got a closet full of shoes. I do. I have an obsession. Yes, I'm serious. I'm doing confession time. I love shoes, and I have too many, and it's ridiculous. Because there are people in this world who don't even have a pair, not one pair. There are not just people in this world, there are people down the street. People right here in front of us who don't have what they need. And I have too many. How about you? What do you have that's a luxury that you call a need?
Donate it.
It's fun to be in Koinonia. I've got like the peanut gallery.
Okay, move on here.
Wow. What is it that you have in your life? Here's really what the invitation is in this text. The invitation is, what are you holding on to? What fear is bubbling underneath the surface that makes you or entices you to hold on to something that maybe you don't need to hold so tightly, that you could clear out and let go of in order to make space for the Spirit of God to enter and be, to make room to be more connected. What are you holding on to? What are you afraid of? I hope this week, as you're in your Lenten journey, it's a weird time to be in a Lenten journey because Easter's so late this year and spring is already sprung. Yeah. It already feels like resurrection, right? The sun is out and the flowers are pushing up through the ground and the cherry blossoms are on the trees. And I drove on my way in this morning and I passed a magnolia tree and there was a big magnolia blooms popping out on this tree. And it feels so good and alive. And it feels like resurrection.
Right.
But we haven't made it through Lent yet. And so the temptation is to just forget Lent. Our time in the wilderness, our time to reflect, our time to clear out, to make space so that we can be resurrected truly. It's a good reminder, though, that resurrection is happening all the time. It's not just once a year. Resurrection happens all the time. It's ongoing. But we're still in Lent, and we don't want to pass it up. We don't want to pass up the opportunity to really dig down, to really discover the things that we need to kind of till the soil of our own lives, so that something new and exciting can come. It could be a rebirth, or it could be something new. Do not be afraid of what you should eat or drink, but know that God knows. Know that God knows your needs. It doesn't mean you should quit your jobs or stop paying bills or ignore the house payments or the rent, or it doesn't mean that you should just stop caring and avoid all of that. That's not what Jesus is suggesting. That's not the point of it. The point is, where are you putting your energy? This week I'd invite you to reflect on where you're spending most of your emotional, your mental, even your physical energy. When you get up in the morning, do you find yourself thinking mostly about how you're going to get something, how you're going to fix something? Where's your energy? Because you're going to find that where you're putting most of your energy is where your life is headed. Now, don't laugh, but it's not my fault. But I have become somewhat addicted to the show, My 600-Pound Life. It's not my fault. It's somebody else's fault. I'm not going to point fingers. But, and I scoffed because it's horrible. I think, can you believe there's a show called that? It's horrible.
Yeah.
My 600-Pound Life. And it's about people who are
Overweight.
600, 700, 800 pounds.
Yeah.
But what's really fascinating, the reason I have become sort of engaged in it, is that it's really fascinating to hear their story. It's so real. When you really take the time, it's not funny. You listen to these stories and their lives and how they got to where they are, and it's painful. But I've noticed that one of the things that's really common to them is that they all say, one of the issues is that when I wake up, all I think about is how I'm going to get my next meal.
Yeah,
Where's it coming from? How will I get it? How many? And that's where all of their energy is going. There's a fear. And usually there's something deeply embedded in some brokenness inside that there's a real reason for them to have that fear. But the fear has led them to a place where it consumes them. I think that's what we do in just our daily lives when we become consumed by a fear. Whether it's from a broken spot or some wound that we hold from long ago, or how that fear, if we allow that to consume us, if we allow it to consume us, it becomes our obsession and it becomes our life. So the invitation in this next week of your Lenten journey is to think about what that might be for you. What prevents you from letting go of worry? What prevents you from trusting in our loving God more? Is there something blocking you? And what do you need to do to clear it out? Do you need a friend? Do you need just the resolve? What do you need to let it be cleared out? There is one of my very favorite lines in this text of Luke. Luke has a lot of my favorite lines, but I just love the beauty and the simplicity of Jesus' words where he says, "Do not be afraid, little flock. Do not be afraid, little flock. Do not be afraid, little flock." I love it because it's just beautiful and it's comforting. And it also, sometimes I think, especially in church, we have so much fear. Oh my goodness. I mean, it's not enough that we have fear in our private lives. Then we have fear for church and our church lives. People, let's let it go. We get so fearful. We get fearful that we're too small. There's not enough. We're fearful that we're too old. There's not enough children. I mean, we love children. We're fearful that there's not enough money. There's not enough resources. The world is falling apart. The sky is falling. We're going to have to close. It's so much fear. What a horrible way to worship God and to live in faith. What a horrible way to do that. What do we need to do as a community, as a little flock? Because Jesus loves little flocks. Jesus had just a little flock. There's just 12 of them. There were a lot of people out there, outside the circle, but just the 12 changed the whole world. What do we need to do to let that fear go and to trust in our loving, all-inclusive, amazing God who has always provided, who has always been there and shown us a way through? How do we do that? That's your job this week, is to prayerfully consider, to think about little flock. For yourself, for the community, how can we be less fearful and worried and stressed so that we can spend much more time being joyful and loving and optimistic and grateful and reaching beyond always? I don't have an answer. It's the work we have ahead of us. May it be so.